I was kicked out of my house on Christmas Eve by my own mother, not because I did something wrong, not because I yelled or threw a fit, but because I brought a store-bought pie, a $12.99 pecan pie from Safeway. Apparently, that was the final insult after 38 years of being the family's emotional support punching bag. I should have known it was coming. When I walked in, Mom looked at my hands like I'd brought roadkill. My sister, Laurel, wrinkled her nose and said, "Oh, you didn't make one? No hello, no hug. Just that." Laurel had brought her famous cranberry tart, garnished with fresh rosemary and cruelty-free sugared cranberries or some crap. She posted it on Instagram before anyone even had a bite. I stood there in my puffer coat, holding the offending pie, while my mother and sister made me feel like a stray dog who'd wandered into a country club. That whole night was just one long audition for Mother of the Year, except I was the bad prop everyone wanted off stage. When I quietly mentioned I was tired, I'd just worked 4 double shifts at the hospital. And yes, I'm the only one in the family with a full-time job, Laurel announced, loudly, how she would never let her kids see her that exhausted. "Self-care," she chirped. "Boundaries." And my mother nodded like I was some kind of tragic cautionary tale for young moms everywhere. Never mind that I never had kids because I was too busy helping her pay off Dad's debts. Never mind that I helped raise Laurel when she went through her spiritual healing crisis and moved back home for 3 years, rent-free, while I footed the grocery bills. But sure, I'm the burnt-out failure. Dinner hit a new low when Uncle Mark raised a toast and said, "To Laurel, who always brings light and joy wherever she goes." Then added, "And to Mary, who, well, she works hard." The table chuckled. I laughed too, because what else do you do when your own family roasts you like the turkey? When it came time for dessert, I offered the pie. "Oh," Mom said, not touching it. "Let's save it for later." Later never came. After everyone left, she followed me to the kitchen. "You embarrassed yourself tonight," she said, arms crossed. "And me. With that pie. With your attitude." I just stared at her. I didn't even cry. "I think," she added, each word like a slap, "it might be better if you spent some time on your own." I blinked. "You're kicking me out? You're almost 40. It's time you figured things out." I packed my things in silence. She didn't stop me. "Laurel texted me that night, 'Hope you're okay. Maybe next time bring something homemade.'" I slept in my car. On Christmas Eve, in a Walgreens parking lot, I wish I could say I was shocked. But truthfully, it felt like the final puzzle piece clicking into place. All the years I gave. The rent I helped cover. The groceries I bought. The rides to doctor's appointments. The birthdays I planned. The way I sat quietly when Laurel got the bigger room, the bigger slice, the louder applause. They called me bitter. I called it survival. But that night, I stopped surviving for them. I started something else. I didn't block their numbers. That would have made them think I was angry. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was hollow. I let their messages pile up. Laurel's just checking in texts, like she was trying on empathy like a coat that didn't fit. Mom's passive-aggressive voicemails. "We haven't heard from you. I hope you're not sulking." Sulking. Like I was 12 and grounded for slamming a door. Meanwhile, I was crashing on a friend's pull-out couch, working doubles at the hospital, and trying to figure out how a woman who paid the electric bill for a house she no longer lived in became the villain of her own family. I stopped answering calls, stopped sending birthday cards, didn't show up for Laurel's kids' preschool graduation party. Apparently, that was a declaration of war, because then it really started. Antonice messaged me on Facebook to say she was heartbroken over what I'd done to Mom. I hadn't done anything. But clearly, the story had already been written without me. Mom told people I had chosen to isolate myself, that I was going through one of my moods, that I was lashing out, probably due to hormones or that work stress. No one mentioned that she kicked me out on Christmas Eve. No one remembered the pecan pie, but they remembered me. The angry one, the difficult one, the one who didn't smile enough, the one who always looked tired, the scapegoat. And the more I pulled back, the harder they tried to drag me back into their fantasy, where Laurel was the glittering centerpiece, and I was the worn-out pedestal. I stopped answering Mom's Friday check-ins. So she sent a card, an actual card, saying, "We miss the old Mary, the helpful one." Underlined, not even subtle. The helpful one, not the loved one. Not the wanted one, the useful one. I started keeping notes. Not for revenge, not yet, but for sanity. Every message, every fake olive branch. Laurel's just wanted to share some holiday pics, emails with 20 photos of her perfect children in matching pajamas, captioned, "Look at all the blessings we're grateful for." Like I was the curse they were so happy to be rid of. It got worse when I stopped paying Mom's internet bill. She called crying, actually crying, saying she couldn't afford it, that she needed it for her spiritual grief group. The same woman who threw me out for a store-bought pie now expected me to Venmo her for Netflix and chakra coaching. So I told her no. That was when the mask cracked. The next day, Laurel called me, no hello, no small talk, just, "Do you seriously think Mom deserves to be treated like this? After all she's done for you?" I almost laughed. All she's done? Like when I covered 2 months of rent during Laurel's divorce, and Mom told me, "Don't mention it. She's been through enough?" Or when I came down with pneumonia, and Mom said, "Well, maybe if you didn't overwork yourself," while handing me cold tea and asking if I could still pick up groceries. They never saw it. Or they did, and just liked it that way. When I stopped performing my part in the family drama, the whole play got shaky. They weren't mad because I was gone. They were mad because they needed someone to pin everything on, and I'd slipped the noose. That's when I started noticing little invasions. My friend told me she got a message from Laurel asking if I was okay. Mom left a comment on an old coworker's post about me saying, "Hope she's finding peace." We haven't heard from her in so long, planting seeds, making me the villain, again. But here's the thing they forgot. I kept receipts, the financial ones, emotional ones, real ones, bank statements, texts, screenshots, emails where I covered bills, bought groceries, lent money. I hadn't been keeping them for revenge, but that's what they would become. Because at some point, silence isn't peaceful anymore. It's a countdown, and I had just started ticking. You'd think that after being iced out, publicly humiliated, and emotionally amputated from my own family, I'd be used to betrayal. But even I wasn't ready for what I found. It started with a notice. A formal-looking envelope buried in a stack of junk mail forwarded from my old address. One of those off-white, thick papered things with urgent property notice stamped across the front. At first I thought it was spam, but the words deed transfer caught my eye. I opened it, and then I sat down. It was the house. My house, the one my name was on. The house I had been helping pay off since I was 25, when Dad had his first heart attack and the mortgage nearly swallowed them whole. The house that Mom had sworn would always be our family home. The one I was told would go to both of you girls, split evenly, of course. Except it wasn't in both our names. It was in mine, solely. My name, on the deed, has been for 5 years. I felt like the floor dropped out. 5 years ago, when Mom was desperate and broke, she convinced me to take out a loan in my name to save the house. She said she was too old, her credit was shot, and the bank trusts people like you. I was 33, naive, and stupidly loyal. I signed the papers. What I didn't realize was I'd become the sole legal owner. And she knew. She knew. There was a folder of scanned documents with her signature, acknowledging it. Dated, witnessed, notarized. She'd played me like a fiddle. And yet for 5 years she let me believe she owned the house. Let me feel like I had no say. Let Laurel move in for a year with her kids because it's Mom's house. Let them walk all over me and treat me like a house guest. I wasn't a guest. I was the landlord. The rage came slow, not hot, cold, like a glacier building inside my chest. I spent that night digging through every bank record I could find, every transfer, every Venmo, every just until next Friday text. Thousands, tens of thousands, in rent, repairs, groceries, childcare. I built a spreadsheet. It took 6 hours, and when I was done, it looked like a case file. That's when I called my friend Danielle. She's a paralegal, tough as hell, quiet, the kind of woman who can burn your house down with a manila envelope. I told her everything. I wasn't even emotional about it anymore. I was clinical. She listened, asked a few questions, then said, "You know you can evict them, right?" I blinked. "But it's my mom. Doesn't matter. You're the owner. and they've never paid rent. You've got them dead to rights." I didn't say anything for a long time. Then I asked, "Will one be the villain?" Danielle paused. "Then, to people who benefit from your silence?" "You already are." I sat with that, because it was true. I had spent my whole life tiptoeing around their moods, their egos, their stories. What if I didn't? What if I just stopped pretending? So we made a plan. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that could come back to bite me. First, I opened a PO box. Then I switched over every legal document, bank account, and mail service. Next, I got in touch with a tenant lawyer. Sent a formal notice of revocation of occupancy rights. Simple, clean, legal. 30 days. They had 30 days. But I wasn't done, because I had years of public shame to answer for. And something poetic about the timing made it feel perfect. Thanksgiving was coming up, and for once, I had a little surprise of my own to bring to dinner. Thanksgiving was always at the house. My house, though no one ever called it that. Not even me. Not until now. Laurel texted a week before, "Dinner at 444. I'll bring the turkey again, obviously. You coming this year, or still taking space?" I stared at her message for a full minute before replying, "Yeah, I'll be there. Got something to bring." Danielle had warned me to keep everything quiet until the paperwork was filed. I did. But I wasn't going to hide anymore. I showed up at 3:45. They'd already started without me. Figures. Laurel opened the door like she was doing me a favor. "Oh good, you came. We weren't sure you'd feel up to it." The house smelled like sage and cinnamon and smug superiority. She was wearing this perfect little fall dress. Her kids running around in monogram sweaters like a catalog page had exploded in the living room. I handed her a white envelope. "What's this?" "Just a little something I've been meaning to give the family." She didn't open it, just smirked and set it on the hall table like it was a birthday card from someone she barely tolerated. Mom came out of the kitchen with that brittle smile of hers. "Well, look who decided to join us. Did you remember to bring something this time?" I smiled. "Just myself. Hope that's enough." Dinner was the usual theater of dysfunction. Uncle Mark made sexist jokes, Laurel talked about her yoga brand, and Mom loudly asked if I'd met any nice men lately. The classic hits. Then, midway through her third glass of Chardonnay, Mom turned to me and said, "You know, we were just saying how grateful we are for each other. Even with everything that's happened, family's forever, right?" I picked up the envelope from the hall table. "Funny you mentioned that," I said, tapping it lightly. "This is actually for you." "What is it?" she asked, a little too sharp. I handed it to her. An update. She opened it, and I watched her face fall in slow motion. Inside, a legal notice of eviction, a notarized statement declaring me as the sole owner of the property, the date the deed had transferred, receipts of every payment I'd made since 2018, photos, bank transfers, screenshots, spreadsheets, and a cover letter from my lawyer. Laurel leaned over, scanned it, and went pale. "You're kidding." "Nope." "You're evicting Mom? I'm evicting trespassers." Mom looked at me like I'd stabbed her in the chest. You wouldn't dare." I didn't blink. "I dare." And I did. Chaos. Laurel stood up so fast her wine sloshed. "This is a joke, right? You're trying to make a point. I'm making a boundary." Mom started shouting. Actually shouting. "You ungrateful little bitch. After everything I've done for you." I stood up. Calm. Measured. "Let me be clear," I said. "Everything you did for me, I paid for. And everything I did for you, you took for granted." She started crying. "You'd put your own mother out on the street. You put me out on Christmas Eve," I said. "Remember?" Laurel tried to jump in, voice high and brittle. "This isn't fair," I cut her off. "Fair? You lived here for a year, rent-free? You let Mom call me dramatic while I paid to keep the lights on. You mocked me for not having a man or a kid. And guess what? I don't need either to take care of myself. Can you say the same?" Silence. Aunt Denise, bless her nosy little heart, had been filming. She lowered her phone slowly. 30 days, I said. "You'll get a formal copy in the mail, but I wanted to deliver this one personally. Thought it'd be nice to finally bring something homemade to dinner." I walked out before they could say anything else. Outside, I took a photo of the house. My house. Posted it on TikTok with the caption, "They called me ungrateful at Thanksgiving." So I took back the house I paid for. Deed in my name. Rent-free days are over. Within 24 hours, it hit 2 million views. The comments? Glorious. The audacity of that family. This is how you reclaim your peace. Queen behavior. We need a sequel. Mom posted some vague guilt bait post on Facebook about betrayal and blood ties. Laurel made her account private. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. 30 days came and went faster than I thought they would. Mom tried to stall, of course, claimed she needed more time, said she was sick, that she'd always imagined living her final years in that house. I reminded her gently that the last time I lived there, she told me I was too old to be coddled, and that the guest room had always been mine until it wasn't. Laurel emailed me, not texted, emailed, a long, nauseating letter about forgiveness, family, and what Dad would have wanted. I didn't respond. Instead, I sent movers. Not for them, for me. Because I was finally moving in. My name had been on the deed for 5 years, but it had never felt like mine until I changed the locks, painted the walls, and threw out every single wicker angel figurine Mom collected for luck. I didn't touch the pantry. That I left as a time capsule. Expired cans, herbal tea, an unopened box of turmeric collagen boosters. They left quietly in the end. No final scene, no dramatic tears. Laurel posted a self-care sabbatical photo of her and the kids in Tahoe. Mom went to stay with her sister in Arizona, where she could heal in peace and complain about me to someone new. Funny how quickly people move on when they can't use you anymore. The first night I slept in the house alone, I walked barefoot through the living room. Everything echoed. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like air. No one yelling, no one sighing, no one treating me like a backup generator for their self-esteem. I sat on the porch with a glass of wine. The stars were out, the street quiet. I could hear my own breathing for once. And in the stillness, I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. They had trained me to believe that love looked like sacrifice. That if I wasn't suffering, I wasn't doing enough. That invisibility was grace, that silence was strength. But that night, in my own home, I heard my voice again. Not loud, not bitter, just mine. I started making plans. I opened a small savings account, bought a new couch, adopted a senior cat named Basil who only liked me in sunspots, started writing again. I had things to say, not to them, but to the women like me who had been too polite for too long. And of course, the TikTok went viral. I didn't post more, but the comments kept coming. Women in their 40s, 50s, 60s saying, "This was my story too. I found peace in that. In knowing I wasn't crazy. That the gaslighting had a name. That the neglect had witnesses." About a month later, I got a voicemail from Mom. No apology, just her voice, sugar-laced and hollow. "I know we've had our differences, but the holidays are coming, and it's not the same without you. Maybe we could talk?" I played it twice, then deleted it. Not out of spite, just clarity. Because healing isn't always reconciliation. Sometimes it's just a quiet boundary with a locked front door. They said I was heartless, but for once, I put my heart first. And it's never beat stronger. Story 2, I'm 29 years old, and my name is Olivia. If I've learned anything in my life, it's how to blend in with the background, particularly when those who are meant to love you the most ignore you. I was raised in a well-furnished house in West Haven, a place where outward appearances are more important than the reality. The house was run like a showroom by my mother, Linda. Everything, including her kids, had to be immaculate, carefully chosen, and under control. Frank, my father, was quieter but just as demanding. Reputation, outcomes, and creating the ideal family were important to him. But there was only one label for excellence in their eyes: Madison. My younger sister was named Madison, the first 2 years behind, and she was their star as soon as she could walk. She has a cute chuckle. Even her outbursts were endearing, and her multitudes were lively. I was either too emotional, too gloomy, or just too much when I did the same things. The worst were birthdays. I vividly recall my 15th birthday, when I saw Madison blow out the candles on a cake with my name printed on it. I didn't care, I told myself. I grew accustomed to the shadows and background. I made an effort to win them affection by being self-reliant, responsible, and a stellar student. I turned into the underdog. Nobody took attention. I occasionally questioned if I had imagined at all. I could have overreacted, but I knew in my heart. Mom stayed up all night to help Madison after she failed a math test. She told me not to brag in front of your sister when I brought home a scholarship letter. I stopped displaying anything after that. In retrospect, I believe I developed an addiction to the quiet. It was less risky than expecting a response and receiving a negative one. I had given up on expecting fairness by the time I was 17. I no longer hoped that my parents would inquire about my day or wait for birthday cards. I had discovered that just one girl was important in our household, and I wasn't the one. With her flawless smile and well-maintained lifestyle, Madison had become our parents' most cherished asset. My parents didn't seem to realize that she was gregarious, charming, and skillfully manipulating. Like a queen defending her heir, Linda would stand up for her, no matter what, laughing, failing, or having tantrums. However, I ended up being the family's silent employee. I put all of my effort into my schoolwork and obligations. I hadn't been asked to take on. I made sure not to get in the way when company arrived, cleaned when mom was exhausted, and prepared meals when she was busy. I was skilled at disappearing mentally, physically, and emotionally, and I was good at it. I did not even receive a family meal upon graduating with honors from high school. However, Linda spread the word about Madison's internet photo of herself standing close to a superstar at a performance, boasting as though Madison had won an Olympic gold medal. I didn't despise my sister. Not then, anyhow. I simply gave up trying to figure out why I wasn't worthy of the same affection. "You're stronger than your sister," my father, Frank, used to say to me. "She requires further assistance." I recall blinking at him, unable to speak, as though abandoning was excused by power. I eventually packed my things quietly, moved into a little dorm without anyone to say goodbye to, and departed for college on a half scholarship. Madison sobbed even then. "I was being theatrical," she remarked. "I was attempting to attract attention," she said. Linda concurred. Frank remained silent. I felt at last somewhat at ease at college. I concentrated on my future and created true pals. Structure, due dates, and tasks with rewards were all things that I found comforting. Even though I couldn't use it at home, I was able to discover my voice in words by studying literature and editing. But the family relationships remained the same, even when viewed from a great distance. I was still the unseen daughter, and Madison was still the golden one. Out of duty, I continued to phone home, and she was always the subject of the talk. Her most recent party, her new lover. She got a new haircut. I nodded, listened, and grinned into the quiet. Although I had long accepted my job, something had begun to change in my heart. A little glimmer of consciousness. I didn't have to continue living this way. I wasn't required to continue narrating a narrative. I never consented to participate. A little more than 2 weeks before Madison's wedding, it was a Thursday afternoon. At work, one had just completed a rigorous manuscript review. I recall sitting in my car, parked at a red light downtown, feeling the weight of the folder on my lap. It was a drab gray sky, the sort that slows down everything. Although I was tired, I felt content. I had recently been shortlisted for a senior editing position at the publishing firm. It was something, but it wasn't definitive. Something that wasn't praised. Then, suddenly, with a loud smash and metal wrenching against metal, my whole world fell apart. Raindrops of glass flying. I was too busy to even shout. I was jerked sideways after being smashed into the steering wheel. My vision became hazy. The world turned dark and everything whirled. I was lying in a hospital bed when I opened my eyes. My arms had tubes going from them. The quiet was broken by the gentle beep of a monitor. My legs felt like they were buried in bricks, and my head ached. I attempted to move, but panic crept up my throat. A quiet voice whispered next to me at that moment. "Don't try to set up just yet, please." I gently turned my head. A nurse's name tag stated, "This young child died." Ava gave a little smile. "You're secure. You were involved in a collision. After a day of unconsciousness, you are presently stabilized." The words came to me slowly. I tried to inquire about what had transpired, but my lips was parched and my body ached. She explained me kindly. A slight concussion, many damaged ribs, and 2 broken legs. Tests were still being conducted. Then came the words that stuck in my mind. "The driver who struck you ran away. A collision, an escape." I felt a chill go through me. At a red light, I was halted. I wasn't driving too fast. I wasn't reckless. I was left in my car after someone crashed into it. Broken, unconscious, powerless. I found out the specifics in the days that followed. The driver's side of my car had been smashed in the crash. Although they had retrieved some debris from the area, the police had not yet located the car. It seemed like weight and needles were used to glue my body together. I was in such much pain that I couldn't even turn my head. Once more, I was confined to that hospital bed and left in quiet. It wasn't emotional this time, though. It was tangible. I was unable to walk. I was unable to rise. I was unable to go. And my family has yet to arrive. They didn't know yet, I reminded myself. I reasoned that Ma must be assisting Madison, who must be preoccupied with wedding preparations. Frank would come after work, I promised myself. The quiet was too loud, so I told myself stories. However, I was aware of the reality. I knew it all along. They didn't prioritize me. Not right now. I didn't see either of my parents for 5 days. With a pillow behind my back, and in the fourth steadily leaking into my arm, I was sitting up straight in bed. When the door opened, Ava had just finished helping me freshen up and brush my hair. My mother's strong flowery perfume was the first thing I smelled. Then, with my father as rigid and calm as ever, her pointed heels clicked on the tile behind her. Linda had on an expensive jacket, a pearl necklace, and a phony, sympathetic expression. Frank was wearing an immaculately straight blue suit tie. They did not appear to be seeing their injured daughter. Instead, they appeared to be attending a conference. I'm still reading. Linda looked at the open book in my lap and spoke in a clear, critical tone. It's a job. Quietly, I answered. Texts? Naturally, she mumbled. Always in operation. She approached. Sat down as if she didn't want to touch anything after casting a disdainful glance around the room. Frank didn't say hi at all. He was direct in his approach. You will be released in a few weeks, according to the physicians. Yes, I nodded, but I'll require rehabilitation and a wheelchair. The agony is still there. Trying not to panic, I let out a breath. Still awful. Well, he said, 3 weeks from now is Madison's wedding. You'll arrive on schedule. I blinked. You're kidding. I am not well enough to go to a wedding. Linda spoke a little louder. Your sister has a big day today. Olivia, you must be present. The bride is her. Everyone will be watching her. I spoke in a forceful yet composed tone. I will continue to need a wheelchair. I can hardly sit pain-free for 20 minutes. I need to relax, the doctor stated. Excuses, Frank interrupted. I worked the day after I tore my ACL when I was your age. You've always evaded accountability by using suffering. I stared at them with disbelief. Instead of asking how I was doing, were they actually there to guilt-trip me into going to a wedding? My throat burned and my chest constricted. I was struck by a car and left comatose in the street. Yet you don't even seem to care. Linda said, You're being dramatic. You are the center of attention, aren't you? I've spent days here. My voice wavered as I spoke. You were where? Why did you not come? Why didn't you? She barked because we were organizing your sister's wedding. You shouldn't be adding to her already high level of stress. I felt something shatter inside. I nearly died. Linda got to her feet. Face your red eyes. It's wild enough. Then, in a single, terrifying move, it occurred. She took the hard plastic blood pressure monitor off the side table, still with its cables connected, and threw it at me, hitting the side of my head. A searing ache ripped through my head. With blood already dripping from my temple, I let out a cry. The machine thudded heavily on the floor. A second later, Ava raced through the door, followed by a security guard who had been down the corridor. What's going on here? She struck me. Dazed, I muttered. Take a step back now. Linda was told by the guard. Frank walked over to the door. There is a miscommunication here. Sir, don't move. The guard issued a warning. 2 additional hospital employees hurried in amid the confusion when Ava hit the emergency call button. Linda opened her mouth to speak. Suddenly, her voice became quiet. I didn't intend to. A patient was attacked by you. The guard lost his temper. The cops are now involved. In 10 minutes, 2 police in uniform showed up. Frank and Linda were taken into custody. In front of me, shackled, in my hospital room. They didn't clash. Frank appeared in disbelief. Linda made an effort to weep. I didn't care if it was real or not. After they were led away, I was left trembling and, for the first time in my life, pressing a cool cloth to my bleeding head. I wasn't just disregarded, I was wounded. Finally, someone noticed it. Following the incident, I spent the night in the hospital for observation. To ensure there was no significant inside damage, the physicians performed a CT scan from my head to the below. Ava lingered late to sit next to me, well past her shift. She continued to murmur and push her eyes on the side of my face. "That wasn't fair to you. Not a bit." I refrained from crying. I refrained from screaming. The antiseptic white ceiling caught my attention as I lay there silently, wondering how far someone must fall before their family realizes the marks they leave behind. Around 9 in the morning, Ava came back with some orange juice, apples, and porridge for breakfast. "You have a guest in the hallway?" she added softly. "My name is Jason," he said. Jason was frozen by me. It had been nearly 2 years since I last saw him. We had attended the same school, lived in the same area, and had exchanged books, heartbreaks, and laughs. The only person in my life who had ever really seen me was him. Our bond weakened as college drew us in various directions. However, I had never forgotten how secure he made me feel. I requested that he wait. Ava went on, "I wasn't certain you were game." "No," I answered softly. "Bring him in." After a minute, the door opened and he appeared, taller than I had recalled, wearing trousers and a gray sweatshirt. His eyes still had the same warmth I recalled from years ago, even if his dark hair was messier than usual. "Hey," he whispered quietly as he entered. I gave an uneasy smile. "Hello." After taking a quick look around, he drew the chair closer. "You appear to have experienced a battle. I also had the urge." A protracted hush ensued. I eventually let out a breath and turned to face him. "Really? Jason, the first needs your assistance." He didn't flinch. "Declare the word." "I'm interested in attending Madison's wedding. I realize it sounds crazy. I'm shattered, battered, and hardly able to move. However, I must be present. Not for her. For me. I must speak the truth. They never let me express what I have to say." Jason bent over. "Are you certain?" Slowly, I nodded. "I've had enough of silence. I need your assistance to get there. Whatever it takes. Wheelchair painkillers." He gave me a close look. Behind his eyes, something was flashing. "I was going to come see you anyway," he added. "I also have something to tell you." I cocked my head a bit. "What is it?" He paused for a moment. "It concerns your mishap. I believe you should hear about something you are unaware of." "Not yet, though." "Let's start by strengthening you so you can confront them and tell the truth." I gasped. He was providing more than simply assistance. There was more to it, something more profound. Additionally, I was aware that I wouldn't be attending that wedding by myself. The wedding day came sooner than I had anticipated. The night before, I hadn't slept well. My mind is racing with too many ideas. The stillness is crowded with too many memories. I had been given the all clear to leave the hospital. In a single circumstance: restricted mobility, medication, assisted pain management, and complete assistance. Without hesitation, I agreed. Everything had already been handled by Jason. He gave me a dress that fit over my casts and was basic yet lovely in navy blue. Blessed be Ava, she helped me get ready by fixing my hair and putting on a little lipstick to hide the bruises close to my hairline. "Are you certain about this?" As she was putting on my jewelry, she inquired. I said, "I've never been more certain of anything." With calm hands, Jason wheeled me out of the hospital. On the drive there, we didn't talk much. He frequently looked at me in the rearview mirror. Silent certainty flooded his gaze. I held the little note card tightly in my hand. I wasn't sure if I would follow it, but it was the one with my speech. The wedding took place at a large hotel in West Haven's downtown, complete with polished marble floors, chandeliers, and white flowers. Arriving guests were wearing elegant tuxedos and flowing dresses, grinning for pictures as though everything was ideal. The bride's parents were already incarcerated, but nobody present knew it. Jason parked close to the side door. "They have a ramp set up," he added, "but I've got you if there's a problem." He assisted me getting into the wheelchair and led me down the inside side hallway. Perfume, laughing, and courteous murmurs filled the air. As we walked in, heads turned. I was recognized by a few of the guests. Others only gazed. A man with a determined step on either side of a woman in a wheelchair who was obviously wounded. I sensed the beginning of the murmuring. "She is the sister of Madison. How did she end up? Shouldn't she be recuperating?" The wedding was just minutes away from starting as we walked into the grand ballroom. The room was lined with rows of white seats. The groom, Eric, stood rigidly in an archway that was lined with flower petals. Despite his good looks, he was preoccupied. Jason whispered to me, "Olivia, you're stronger than all of them." I gave one mute nod. I noticed Madison at that point. In her white clothing, she shone brightly. Her makeup was perfect, every hair in its proper position. For a brief moment, she saw me right away. Her smile wavered. She turned aside, though, and carried on posing for pictures. She didn't find my presence surprising. As the ceremony started, she was irritated. I sensed a change in the tension in the room. Jason nudged me forward to a position close to the front row. The mother of the groom, Susan, was sitting next to us. She gave me a little nod after giving me a serious look. I was unable to determine if it was respect, curiosity, or pity. All three, perhaps. Everyone was welcomed by the officiant. The music started. Madison gripped Frank's cousin's arm rather than our father's as he walked down the aisle. Nobody gave an explanation for her true parents' absence. As vows were made, the falsehood lingered in the air like perfume, sweet, potent, and oppressive. I folded my hands in my lap and sat quietly. My purpose was not to interrupt the wedding. I was here to get over my act. Applause marked the end of the event. Flashes of the camera and fake laughs. Every stretch felt like a lifetime as I remained still in my chair. With one hand softly resting on the wheelchair handles, Jason stood behind me. Since we had walked in, he had been silent, just remained around like a silent barrier. The guests started to make their way to the reception hall that was adjacent. The flutes of champagne clinked. Soft jazz was played by the band. Waiters carried platters of bubbly drinks between chats. Everyone was making a concerted effort to act as though the bride's parents hadn't been present on the most important day of her life. It was time, I knew. Slowly, we made our way inside the reception area. I was still able to view the stage when Jason moved my chair to a discreet corner table. Every table had a flower centerpiece, towering candles, and exquisite gold draperies. As Madison and Eric greeted visitors, a photographer hovered close by to take shots. Madison glanced in my direction many times. She never grinned. Then, using a cordless microphone, the master of ceremonies took over. He said, "Ladies and gentlemen, here are some family members who will be extending their congrats to the newlyweds. Let's start by listening to Olivia, the bride's sister." A beat skipped in my chest. No one had informed me that I would be speaking. Jason gave my shoulder a little squeeze. "You're capable." I nodded after taking a long breath. He stopped just in front of the stage and wheeled me forward. I was given the microphone by the MC, who leaned down to do so. Everyone looked around. For a minute, I swallowed deeply. Only my heartbeat was audible. Then I lifted the microphone and spoke, my voice solid yet tremulous. "Good night," I said. I look around the throng. I might not be familiar to all of you. I'm Madison's elder sister, Olivia, and I wasn't present for the picture session today. I arrived to tell the truth. There was silence in the room. 2 weeks ago, I wasn't meant to be here. I got into an automobile accident. Someone who never paused to see whether I was still alive struck me when I was stopped at a red light. I was admitted to the hospital. My legs are both fractured, a concussion and cracked ribs. The room erupted in whispers. However, my parents didn't come to check on me when they finally paid me a visit in the hospital. They arrived to inform me that I was required to attend this wedding, regardless of the state I was in. My mother became upset with me when I refused. She tossed a medical equipment at my head after picking it up. The audience resonated with gasps. I had blood on my hands. I let out a yell. Security and the nurse entered at that point. They aren't here today for that reason, because what they did to me led to their arrest. The audience froze. The music had ceased as well. I've been silent all my life. I've been courteous. I haven't been seen. On the other hand, my sister was the best child. It was me who was instructed to quit whining and to be strong. In order for her to shine greater, I was instructed to shrink myself. I turned to face Madison. She had a light complexion. Her hands gripped the table's edge. But I'm not getting any smaller today. Since I've come to the conclusion that quiet benefits no one, I'm not hiding today. After a moment, I lowered my voice to Madison. I hope you find the happiness I never had in this marriage. However, I will no longer defend those who harm me, only because they are related to me. The applause began softly and then became louder as I returned the microphone. Everyone stood. Others dabbed at their eyes. I sat trembling as Jason moved forward and carefully wheeled me back to my seat. Not out of fear, but out of freedom. It was the first time they had listened to me and the first time I had spoken. I was still recovering my breath when Jason said, "Are you okay?" in a soft voice. I nodded just a little. I had taken more than I had anticipated from my speech. Emotionally, not physically. 7 minutes of quiet interrupted by a lifetime. The room was in startled silence for 7 minutes. Jason then moved ahead. Unsure of what he was doing, I watched him make his way to the front. Be calm. He was still, but his eyes were burning. Despite his perplexed expression, the master of ceremonies gave him the microphone without asking. With a quiet firmness that reverberated to the ballroom's outermost walls, Jason cleared his throat and began. Although I had no intention of speaking today, there is something that must be heard and stated. Everybody looked at me, then at him, then back again. I've known Olivia since we were little, and my name is Jason. She invited me to accompany her today, but I'm also here for another reason, something I can't keep to myself any longer. He hesitated a moment. Madison tensed. Eric gave her a perplexed expression. Jason went on. I collaborate with a private legal investigator. I was working late downtown 2 weeks ago when I was leaving the workplace. There was a major vehicle collision that I saw. A car hit a stopped vehicle after running a red light at full speed. The motorist did not halt. They ran away. Now the murmurs came back, louder. Yesterday, I informed the authorities about the license plate number I had captured. I followed up. The car was found at an out-of-town garage. After a front-end accident, it was being repaired. He turned to face Madison squarely. "You are the car's registered owner." Madison's expression became pale. The headlines were already out, and her palm shook as she sought for Eric's arm. At her own wedding, the bride was detained, and, underneath the gleaming exterior, the city was alive with rumors of the broken family. I was unconcerned with the rumors. I desired the truth, realized where it was most important. Before the law, under oath. Linda, the room fell into a thick quiet. The victim of that hit and run was Olivia. According to Jason, her own sister was the one who left her unconscious, bleeding, and broken in her car. Madison's voice rose in dread as she abruptly got up. It wasn't deliberate. I was unaware of her presence. I was simply in a panic. As if she were radioactive, Eric moved away from her. "You let your sister to perish after hitting her?" "I didn't intend to, I promise." He gave a head shake. "You didn't even tell me." Jason wasn't finished yet, as well as Olivia's parents. They were aware. They contributed to its concealment, kept it a secret while taking the vehicle to a private repair facility. They are incarcerated for that reason. For obstructing justice as well as violence. The visitors let out a collective gasp. Many got up from their chairs. Clearly startled, Eric's mother, Susan, placed her hands to her face. Now the place was in disarray. They took out their phones. Outrage replaced the whispers. Then the last blow was delivered. Silently, 2 officers in uniform moved forward from their position at the rear. One of them, Madison Walker, stated, "You are being arrested for felony hit and run. Careless hazard, and neglecting to disclose a crime." The room went cold. Madison made an effort to say anything at all. However, the cops had already read her rights and grabbed her by the arms. With his wedding band dangling loosely on his finger, Eric stood there in disbelief. As they escorted Madison out of the ballroom, he carefully and silently removed it and set it on the table. I just sat there breathing, not grinning or feeling victorious. In my life, for the first time, it wasn't only me who knew the truth. Everyone in that room owned it. Tension and the scent of ancient wood filled the courtroom. Even though the wedding was weeks ago, the pain of betrayal had not lessened. I sat next to Jason in my wheelchair. When the bailiff called the court to order, we both fell silent. The headlines were out there already. At her own wedding, the bride was detained. And underneath the gleaming exterior, the city was alive with rumors of the broken family. I was unconcerned with the rumors. I desired the truth, realized where it was most important. Before the law, under oath, Frank and Linda sat at the defense table, both of them pallid and exhausted. For once, the horror in Linda's eyes was visible through her cosmetics. Frank refused to give me a glance. Madison, who faces criminal charges, sat aside in a different hearing. We had all been connected, and this day would resolve their trial, which was taking place next door. Really difficult to bury. Jason assisted me in filing charges for mental and physical trauma, assault, hospital attack, conspiracy to obstruct justice, and evidence tampering. I gave a calm, honest testimony without embellishing or dramatizing anything. I just recounted the tale, my narrative as it actually transpired. Judge Carter, a strict but just woman, listened carefully. The medical reports were delivered by Jason. My nurse, Ava, testified. They played hospital security footage. Jason also provided the phone logs and repair shop receipt, which demonstrated that Linda and Frank had purposefully hidden Madison's behavior. Jason's closing remarks stirred something within of me, not just optimism but power. "This is not just a case of broken bones and bruises," he remarked. "It is about a family structure that rewarded one child with protection and punished the other with isolation, and it is about years of quiet. This court has the opportunity to recognize that no one is above the law, regardless of their lineage or title, and that quiet does not equate to peace." The judge inhaled, and the room stayed still. The verdicts followed. Linda Walker is convicted of both obstruction and assault. Frank Walker was found guilty of conspiring to hide a criminal offense. Then came sentencing. Both received 18-month sentences without the chance of early release from state jail. Following discharge, a separate order was imposed requiring community service and rehabilitation. When the gavel struck, Linda started crying. Frank lowered his head without uttering a word. I refrained from crying. I didn't recoil. I just watched while they were removed. Resolution, rather than retaliation. We were outside the courthouse 1 hour later. I felt the warmth of the sun on my flesh. Jason was standing next to me, his countenance soft, his tie relaxed. He extracted a little velvet box from his jacket pocket. "My breath caught," he murmured quietly, referring to Olivia. "I've seen you fight fights that no one should have to fight alone. You are the most courageous person I have ever encountered. Furthermore, I don't want to merely be your witness or buddy. I would want to be your house." He opened the package. There was a plain yet tasteful ring within, subtle yet profoundly meaningful. "Are you going to wed me?" My eyes filled with tears. Release the type of tears that come when you realize you're finally being noticed, but not because you're in agony. Safe at last. "Yes," I muttered. I crossed the park without a cane a year later. Soft pink petals fell all around me like a silent celebration as the breeze carried the aroma of cherry blossoms. Jason waited under a tree on a seat. His hand was softly resting on his knee, and he was grinning as he noticed me. He stood as I walked up to him and remarked, "I still can't believe you're walking like that." I grinned. My physical therapist can't either. Together, we watched the families go by and the children giggling by the fountain. On chilly days, my legs still hurt, but I was no longer in need of medications. My heart and body were beginning to heal from the wounds. A lot had changed. I took a few months off after the trial to concentrate entirely on getting better. When spring finally arrived, Jason and I realized that our temporary arrangement was no longer an option. In a low-key ceremony by the lake, we were married. No contrived pictures, no matching gowns. Only those that cared about us. In a little peace circle, I went back to work as an associate editor at the publishing firm. To my astonishment, the team greeted me with respect rather than sympathy once my supervisor took over my job. The book, however, was the most significant difference. Invisible. Not anymore. An authentic tale of bravery, survival, and quiet. I owned it. Authored, revised, and released under my name. It turned into a silent bestseller. I received messages, emails, and even thank you stops at cafes. That was also my story. Madison, too. She received a 3-year jail term. After serving less than 2 years, she was freed on severe parole and required to attend therapy as required by the court. Since then, we haven't talked. I used to be haunted by her quiet. It releases me now. Following their release, Linda and Frank made an effort to get in touch. Voicemails and letters. Sorry. I read either one or two. They apologized, saying they didn't realize what they were doing. However, I had discovered something significant. To forgive is not to forget. It's deciding for yourself to have serenity, whether the other person is sympathetic to your plight. Therefore, no, I didn't return. What was never entire was not rebuilt by me. Jason accompanied me as I proceeded. as a lady who pieced her life back together rather than as a survivor. On the bench, Jason turned to face me. Did they not reach out again? I gave a nod. Are you all right? I'm really okay, I said. For a long time, we sat in quiet, allowing the moment to unfold like a page that no longer needed to be written. I glanced at my ring. Its surface is swirling with sunlight, and I felt it fully, and without question for the first time in my life. Liberty. Not the type you rush at, the kind you gradually, painstakingly, but irrevocably construct. If you could sense my narrative, if it made even a small impression on you, after that, do take a time to subscribe to the channel, like, and comment. You have no idea how much your support means. I appreciate you hearing what I have to say. Story 3. I looked incredulously at my phone. I just received a call from my mother asking me to my parents' place for supper. We hadn't spoken in months, and I hadn't been there in a year. I'm Dana, the family's black sheep, and I'm 32 years old. That's what they believe, anyhow. I was always second best as a child. Melissa was my younger sister. She was the perfect child. She had a knack of making everyone, especially our parents, adore her, and she was more attractive and charming. They weren't being mean to me. It was obvious that they liked her more. They would be too busy to attend the dancing recitals. When Melissa's turn came, they would somehow find time. My sister's mediocre grades, which earned me lectures, somehow turned into her greatest effort. With a groan, I set my phone down on the counter in my kitchen. A tiny luxury in the condo, the marble felt cold to the touch. I didn't mention it to them. Mom called now, but why? What were they seeking? All right, I whispered to myself. However, I arrived at my parents' modest suburban house a week later. I purposefully wore pants, a basic top, and little jewelry. There was nothing that would suggest I was anything other than the middle manager who was having trouble. They believed I was inhaling deeply. The doorbell rang. The door was opened by Dad, Donna. Enter, enter. His greeting was sincere yet preoccupied. I could see why Melissa was presiding over the couch as soon as I entered the living room, as she made a lot of gestures and related a narrative about her workplace conflict. Mom and Dad's whole attention was on her. Her flawless grin never wavered as she stopped speaking when she noticed me. Oh, she continued in a falsely lovely voice. The prodigal daughter is back. Mom sprang to her feet. We're so happy you could make it, honey. She gave me a quick embrace before heading back to her place next to Melissa. I took a seat in the armchair across from them and observed Melissa's hardly disguised disdain as she looked over my attire. She smirked and remarked, I love the thrift store chic look. Thanks, I said plainly. Designer labels are not necessary for everyone to feel good about themselves. Dad cleared his throat. Your mother has prepared a delicious meal, Donna. In around 20 minutes, it should be ready. Before Mom said supper was ready, we engaged in uncomfortable small conversation. Around the dining table, we were seated, the same one I grew up with. Dad filled everyone's glasses with wine. Melissa started talking about her work at a marketing company right away. I felt like they were pleading with me to take on the Johnson account. She said that I was the only person capable of handling it. That's fantastic, my love. Mom smiled and went to give her a hand pat. Dad abruptly turned to face me. Donna, how about you? Still working at the same organization. What was it? Assistant manager. Before responding, I took a drink of wine. Do you still work at Berkshire Financial? Indeed. Melissa gave a snort. You've been there for, 8 years now, Don? God. By your age, most individuals would have advanced. I mean, in the last 4 years, I've had 3 promotions. If they only knew that I had been the finance director of Berkshire for the last 3 years, I could feel my jaw tighten. That previous year I was included in Business Weekly's 40 Under 40, and that my yearly bonus alone exceeded Melissa's entire income. However, they had never inquired, so they were unaware. Never gave a damn enough to follow my life. Rather than correcting her, I just grinned. Not everyone is as talented or driven as you are, Mel. As she gave Melissa another portion of mashed potatoes, Mom said, this was the direction of the discourse. During dinner, Melissa spoke about her forthcoming Hawaiian vacation, her envious coworkers, and her fantastic pay. In the end, my parents praised her profusely and asked follow-up questions. They never asked me any insightful questions about my life. Melissa said, I've been saving for Hawaii for months, but it's not that hard when you make good money. She gave me a cocky glance. I pushed my plate aside and remarked, "That sounds fantastic. However, I should probably leave early. We'll meet tomorrow. Mom, thank you for supper." I gathered my handbag as I arose. Melissa and Dad stayed at the table as Mom escorted me to the door. As I drove back to my apartment downtown, she patted my shoulder and said, "It was good to see you, honey." I couldn't get rid of the suspicion that my invitation had been sent with a hidden agenda. In any case, I was happy to be going home. Back in my roomy flat, I poured myself a good glass of wine and kicked off my shoes. Not what my folks provided, which was inexpensive. I was just getting comfortable on my balcony, overlooking the downtown skyline. I got a ping on my phone. Melissa sent a message. "I hope your melancholy little existence isn't getting to you, sis. Success is not achievable for everyone, I suppose. I'll send you a postcard from Hawaii, so don't worry." After looking at the message for a while, I started chuckling. If only she were aware. I took another sip of my wine and closed the message without replying. In my opulent apartment on the 28th floor, overlooking the glittering city lights, I didn't always have such a tense relationship with my family. Before Melissa was born, I was quite young. It was different. I vaguely recall my mom reading bedtime tales and my dad throwing me into the air. But when Melissa came when I was 4, everything was different. She was the ideal child. Seldom did they cry. Her large blue eyes seemed to captivate everyone who saw her, and she was always grinning. The pattern became evident when I was 10 years old. I was recently there, and Melissa was unique. I did everything I could to please them. I volunteered on the weekends, studied until midnight, and joined every club. I served as the yearbook editor, debate team captain, and valedictorian in high school. However, my parents' chairs were vacant as I made my graduation speech and looked around for their joyful expressions. Instead, they had brought Melissa to her dancing competition. Something inside of me broke that day. I understood that my efforts would never be sufficient. I so gave up attempting to please people and began living for myself. After graduating with honors and receiving a full scholarship to Princeton, I was hired by Berkshire Financial. I was leading my own team in 5 years. I was elevated to the position of financial director 3 years ago, and I didn't share any of it with them. My phone began ringing and I was jarred from my recollections. Mom was back. I was hesitant to respond. "Hi there. Next Saturday we will have a family get-together. Everyone will be present. And your cousins Carol and Uncle Jim. We want you to join us." I scowled. "What's the event?" "Just a family meeting, I see. We have a noteworthy announcement to make," she said in an intentionally ambiguous tone. I ought to have declined. My gut advised me to avoid it. However, my curiosity overcame me. "All right. At what time?" "4. Oh, Donna also made an effort to dress correctly. I hung up, looking like I usually showed up in tatters, fuming properly. On Saturday, I stood contemplating in my walk-in closet. At last, I decided on a basic black dress. Chanel. To the untrained eye, it appeared small, yet it cost more than Melissa's monthly wage. You wouldn't know, though, until you saw the delicate stitching and fabric quality. There were automobiles lining the driveway when I got to my parents' house. I recognized Uncle Jim's vehicle and Carol's automobile. I inhaled deeply before going inside. Carol and Donna yelled and drew me into an embrace. Years have passed. "Look at you. You're so mature and reasonable." I made an effort to grin. "Nice to see you as well." And Carol, I spent the next 15 minutes chit-chatting with relatives I could hardly recall, while my parents and Melissa sat in a corner, muttering to each other and looking at me every now and again. They were obviously thrilled about this announcement, whatever it was. At last, Mom summoned everyone to the dining table, which had been enlarged to seat the 15 or so family members in attendance. After we were all seated with our meal plates, she got up and used a spoon to tap her glass. "There's a special reason we brought you all here today," she said with a smile. "Melissa's going to share some amazing news." Melissa got to her feet, dramatically clearing her throat. 2 weeks ago, she said, her voice brimming with pride, "I purchased my own Westridge Heights apartment." Applause broke out in the room. While not the most affluent neighborhood in town, Westridge Heights was undoubtedly one of the nicer ones. "It's a beautiful 2-bedroom, Melissa added. The down payment was provided by parents. She blew them a kiss, of course, and they grinned broadly in return. The housewarming party is when Melissa was called out by cousin Brian. Yes, I still haven't made up my mind, still working on making everything flawless. I took a sip of water and grinned to myself. Well done. It was a nice accomplishment, even if she needed our parents' help. Mom's voice was unusually loud as she abruptly turned to face me. Donna, you haven't congratulated your sister. All eyes turned to me. Melissa giggled. She's probably just jealous. Not everyone can afford property in this market. My parents exchanged knowing smiles. Then Mom, making sure everyone could hear, said, well, it'll be a long time before Donna can match this achievement. Property ownership is for those with real careers. The table fell silent, everyone watching for my reaction. They expected embarrassment, perhaps tears or stammering excuses. Instead, I laughed, a genuine, spontaneous laugh. Actually, I said, I bought my place 2 years ago. Melissa's smile faltered. A condo, you mean, or a townhouse? I took another bite of food, chewing slowly, making them wait. No, it's an apartment. 4 bedrooms, corner unit with a wraparound terrace in Lakeside Tower. Gasps around the table. Lakeside Tower was the most exclusive address in the city. That's impossible, Melissa sputtered. You're a middle manager. You couldn't afford a broom closet in Lakeside. I dabbed my lips with a napkin. I'd been financial director at Berkshire for 3 years now. My salary and bonuses are comfortable. The shock on their faces was priceless. Dad's work clattered onto his plate. Financial director, he repeated. Why didn't you tell us? I met his gaze evenly. None of you ever asked. A heavy silence fell over the table. Then Mom's expression suddenly softened. Darling, that's wonderful news. When are you having your housewarming? We'd love to see this apartment. I had my housewarming 2 years ago. I replied calmly with friends. Mom's smile stiffened. Melissa's face had turned an interesting shade of red. The rest of my relatives were looking at me with newfound interest, as if seeing me for the first time. Uncle Jim raised his glass. Well, congratulations, Donna. That's quite an achievement. Others murmured agreement, while my parents and Melissa sat in stunned silence as dinner continued. I noticed how everyone suddenly wanted to talk to me, ask about my job, my life. People who had barely acknowledged me for years were now hanging on my every word. I didn't stay long after my revelation. The atmosphere had become unbearable, my relatives suddenly fawning over me, Melissa sulking in the corner, and my parents switching between shock and an unsettling eagerness to reconnect. I made my excuses after dessert, citing an early morning meeting. But it's Sunday tomorrow, Mom protested, following me to the door. Global markets don't sleep, I replied, which wasn't entirely untrue. I did have a call with our Tokyo office, but not until the afternoon. The drive home was strangely liberating. For years, I'd hidden my success from them, partly out of spite, partly because their opinion had stopped mattering long ago. Now that the truth was out, I felt oddly light, but also wary. My apartment welcomed me with its familiar comfort. I kicked off my heels and collapsed onto my living room sofa, staring at the city lights through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The revelation at dinner replayed in my mind, and suddenly everything clicked. The random dinner invitation last week, today's family gathering. It all made sense. Now, they'd wanted to showcase Melissa's achievement and, by contrast, highlight my supposed failures. They'd gathered the entire family to witness my humiliation. Instead, they'd ended up looking foolish. And now they were scrambling to adjust to this new reality where I wasn't the family disappointment. I was still processing this when my phone began buzzing incessantly. First my father, then my mother, then Melissa. I silenced it and turned on a movie instead. Whatever they wanted to say could wait until morning. When I finally checked my phone the next day, I had 17 missed calls and numerous text messages. Most were variations of call us immediately and we need to talk. I ignored them all and went about my Sunday routine yoga, brunch with friends, and preparation for the upcoming work week. By evening, the messages had taken on a more urgent tone. Finally, a lengthy text from Mom appeared. We need to speak with you. Your father and I have given this a lot of thought. We've always supported Melissa financially because we thought you were struggling too much to ask for help. Now that we know you're doing so well, we believe as family we should all support each other. Melissa is having trouble with her mortgage payments as her successful sister. Surely you could help. Call us back immediately." I stared at the message in disbelief, then started laughing so hard I nearly dropped my phone. The audacity was breathtaking. After years of neglect and favoritism, after attempting to humiliate me in front of the entire family, they now expected me to bail out their golden child. I typed a response. "I'm not interested in discussing this. You tried to shame me yesterday, and now you're begging for my aid. Please don't contact me again regarding this topic." I could see the 3 dots coming and vanishing as Mom started and stopped typing many times. Finally, "You're being selfish, Donna. This is what family does. If you reject, you're choosing to exclude yourself from this family. Think carefully about this." I didn't bother answering. Instead, I poured myself a glass of wine. There was a peculiar air of finality to it, a chapter of my life finishing. It stung, but less than I imagined. The next morning at work, I buried myself in quarterly reports and budget meetings. Being finance director of a big corporation kept me busy enough to shove family strife to the back of my mind. By midweek, I'd virtually forgotten about the whole incident. Then my assistant buzzed my office. "2 people in reception are adamant about seeing you, Miss Williams. They're your parents," they say. My hand was hovering above the keyboard when I froze. "Inform them that I have a meeting." They promised to wait as long as it took. I let out a sigh and considered my alternatives. Send them in once I've had 5 minutes. I hurriedly fixed my suit jacket and cleaned my desk. As my parents entered my corner office with its expansive views, their faces were a combination of artistic and determined looks. Dad said, "Nice place," his gaze resting on the honors and certifications on my credenza. "Thank you. How may I help you?" I spoke in a professional manner, as though they were just another unexpected guest. Mom came forward. "Donna, we must talk about Melissa's predicament. She finds it difficult to make her mortgage payments, along with your financial achievements." I am aware. I forcefully interrupted. "Melissa's mortgage is not being paid by me." Dad's cheeks flushed. "Listen up, young woman. Family is helpful. Family, I always have, as has your mother." "What is always the case?" quietly I asked. "Always supported me, always gave me equal support. Showed up for all of my significant events." They looked at one another uncomfortably. "That's not the same." Melissa required extra care, according to Mom. She had greater sensitivity. She now requires additional funds. I'm family again all of a sudden. I gave a head shake. "When you skipped my high school graduation, you didn't think of me as family. Not to mention the dozen birthdays and holidays I spent by myself, or my college commencement. You're acting absurdly." Dad lost his temper. "Your folks are where? In a biological sense?" "Yes, but years ago you ceased to behave like parents." I stood to indicate that our meeting was over. "I need to get to work." Mom's face grew stern. "You will regret it if you abandon us now. In the end, family is all you have. You have never been more like family to me than my pals." I hit the intercom button. "Nancy, show my guests around." Dad turned back as they walked away. "Donna, you're making a grave error. It's not over yet." I reclined in my chair as the door shut behind them, feelings whirling. A stronger part of me felt glad, as though I had finally gotten rid of something harmful from my life, while another part of me wanted to cry. Over the following several weeks, I pushed myself into my work, working longer hours and taking on more tasks. My coworkers were sufficiently professional to detect any difference in my conduct. Not to bring it up, I turned down offers to weekend breakfasts and after-work cocktails because I preferred the privacy of my flat or the diversion of lengthy runs along the river. Then my phone called with an unknown number over a month after the altercation at work. "Hi there?" I gave a cautious response. "Donna, it's out." "Carol." Though we had never been close, Carol had always been the least critical of my family, so I felt a little more at ease. "Hello, Carol, how are you?" she replied, her voice down as though she was worried about being overheard. "I thought you should know what's happening. Everyone is hearing from your parents that you're a horrible person. They're arguing that despite your wealth, you won't aid your sister. They are currently having trouble paying her mortgage." I gave a dry laugh, I'll guess. "Dad works the weekends and Mom has taken on extra work." "That's right. How did you find out?" "Because they want that story to be told." While the self-centered, rich parent declines to assist, The poor, industrious parents give up all for their suffering daughter. Carol paused. Is it accurate to say that you aren't assisting them? Indeed. It's accurate. My sister's mortgage is not something I'm paying. May I inquire why? With a groan, I paced my living room. Carol, do you recall when I graduated from high school? Naturally. The valedictorian was you. You gave a beautiful speech. There were no parents present. Instead, they attended Melissa's dance recital. They also did not attend my college graduation. They were my second when I received my first promotion. It wasn't until that dinner that I informed them that I had been appointed financial director. They had been treating me as if I were invisible for years, except if they were looking for something to contrast Melissa with. I hesitated, my throat constricted, and all of a sudden, they are only interested in my life because they believe I can help them with their issues. There was a pause in the line. Carol finally admitted that I was unaware of the severity of Melissa's increased attention. I simply believe that you ought to be aware of their words. I appreciate the heads up, thank you. I hung up and wandered to my balcony to gaze at the skyline of the city. Was I being uncaring? Perhaps. However, I had learned to defend myself from years of emotional neglect. Long ago, my parents had made their decision, consistently picking Melissa over me. They could now accept the repercussions. The following morning, I decided. I had been putting off a 3-week vacation to Europe for far too long, so I opened my laptop and made the reservation. Paris, Rome, Barcelona. I eat at fantastic restaurants, go to museums, and completely ignore family drama. My mother sent me a text as I was completing the reservations. Yesterday, your sister lost her job. She is now undoubtedly unable to pay her mortgage. If you don't help, she'll lose her apartment. Is that what you want? I stared at the message, shaking my head at the manipulation. I typed back, what I want is for you all to handle your own problems, like adults. I'm going on vacation for 3 weeks. Please don't contact me again. I blocked her number before she could respond, then did the same with my father's and Melissa's. It was severe but essential. I couldn't go forward if I kept being sucked back into their turmoil. The day before my travel, I had lunch with my best friend Tara. We'd met in college, and she'd been my support through every career milestone and personal crisis. So you're truly cutting them off? She inquired as we settled into our favorite cafe. I already have, I answered, spreading my napkin on my lap. I banned their numbers, and I urged security at work not to let them in again. Well, she swirled her iced drink thoughtfully. Are you cool with that? They're still your family, are they? Though I gazed out the window. Family is meant to be there for you when you need them, encourage you, and care about your accomplishments. None of it has ever been done by them. I felt lighter than I have in years as I boarded my trip to Paris the next day. There was nobody in the seat next to me, a little extra on a lengthy journey. The flight attendants were just locking the doors as I got comfortable, opened my book, and got ready to take off. I received an email notice on my phone. The subject line said from Dad, but the address was unknown. After hesitating, I opened it. Your juvenile conduct has disappointed your mother and myself, Donna, refusing to talk about family issues and blocking our numbers. We didn't raise you like this. Melissa's having trouble. Additionally, you have an obligation to assist as her sister. In order to pay her mortgage this month, we had to take money out of our retirement funds. Is this the girl we brought up? A self-centered lady who prioritizes lavish trips over the needs of her family. While you are gallivanting throughout Europe, consider what you are doing. I put my phone on airplane mode after deleting the email without replying. Before long, we were ascending above the clouds as the engines roared to life. Underneath me, the metropolis shrank and shrank until it was but a dot, then nothing at all. I spent 3 weeks immersed in culture, history, and the arts. I ate gelato by the Trevi Fountain, strolled around Paris at daybreak, and watched the sunset from a beach near Barcelona. I didn't post any of the hundreds of pictures I took to social media so my relatives could view them. I was alone in these moments. My final night overseas. I came to a realization as I was seated at a tiny cafe in Rome. I had lost my anger. The pain persisted, a lifeless lake under my ribcage. However, the blazing animosity had subsided. Melissa and my parents had already made their decisions. I had also created mine. We were all dealing with the fallout. My flat seemed even more like a haven when I got home, rejuvenated and tanned. There was a pile of mail, bills, magazines, and a letter from Tara, who had traveled to Seattle for a conference. On my kitchen counter, nothing from my relatives. I ordered takeout, unpacked, and sat down with a glass of wine on my balcony. I had freedom, emotionally as well as financially. It was my way forward, alone to make a decision, free from past hurts and expectations. I grinned as I lifted my glass to the starry sky. Cheers to the future.